wasn't meant to be.
Okay guys, so this is currently a stage 4 side exit straight through TD5 15P engine. We are removing this for something which will be much louder. Workshop sound test 1 with an Empire tuning limiter set in. Here we go. Last time it will be in this vehicle. You can switch off and pull it out, but it won't be the last time this engine is heard. Let's get on the tools, let's take this engine out, and then we'll introduce you to what is going to be changed into this. It'll be much louder somehow, faster. I mean, this vehicle gets crazier. I love it. Please subscribe, have a drink, enjoy. This is going to be a real pain. I think because we are pulling the engine, I'm not going to gatekeep it. We're putting a 6.2 litre GM Corvette engine LS3. And it's going to be an automatic gearbox. It's going to be way more suited for this. To be fair, this smile should be way bigger because it'll be your first LS3 conversion, watching me doing LS3, watching me and Tom doing LS3, how we do it, what we do different. But it will be louder than this. And I don't know if it comes across on camera. Some of you have heard it in real life when we've been at Land Rover shows. It is deafening. And we have been tasked to make it louder than it currently is. So that will be very interesting. But I can't work at this height realistically, so I think we put it on some puny little wheels. It will still have a 5-inch lift, something a bit more manageable so that I can work at.
To everybody who's not a member of workshop staff at Juice Motors, this is a very rare sight, seeing Sam actually put legs under a vehicle. Usually he gets me to do it.
I'm just way past this rank.
Last one, when you're all done.
Yeah!
You'll have forgotten how to do it. You haven't done it for so long, have you?
Yeah, come on, mate.
That's much more work.
Okay, that's a little bit better. south. Apple, cherry for you.
Thank you very much. What do you reckon? What are they called again? Zingfest. It's like normal Tangfastic.
They also have blueberry.
It's like a normal Tangfastic.
No, it's not.
Yeah, mine is.
Oh.
It's a bit disappointing.
Anyway,
I was expecting some zing.
we're expecting some zing. Let's have a look at the engine, the gearbox, the kit. You guys have seen the car before. It is a huge monster, and this is a huge amount of work. And I hope you guys are enjoying the engine swap content. Here we have a 6.2 litre LS straight from the States. Super cool. This is one of these things, right? An LS swap is just like every 13-year-old boy's dream. Super cool, loud, American V8, and it should go absolutely wonderful in this little 90. And it should make a hell of a racket. So you guys are going to see, I'm going to show you the normal process. You guys are going to see how we're going to LS swap it, what is involved with the job. Some of you are mad enough to do this at home. And so I hope that this will be some guidance and a little bit insightful. We have a crate and we have a gearbox sitting over there, and I have a whole host of parts to complete this, to put it in a Defender. There's a lot of modifications. You can't just buy a Chevy engine and gearbox and expect it to fit into a Land Rover, of course. They are non-native. There is going to be a custom wiring harness, custom cooling, which all of this, by the way, has to be much larger, much more over-spec'd than a standard Defender, because if you shove a 500 brake horsepower LS into a Defender, we're going to break some stuff. And the standard radiator just isn't up to the job of cooling down a big V8. Even the standard LR V8 has a bigger radiator than the original diesel variant. So, let's have a look.
So I think we've got we've got two 2.4 TDCI engines, which have blown up, obviously. I think bring one over. Obviously they've got ancillaries on, so they're a lot bigger. But general size comparison to this, which produces 4 times the horsepower, and is capable of producing 6 times the horsepower of a 2.4. So usually American engines are not famous for producing a large amount of power.
Name one.
However, well, I mean, like all pre-2010 American engines.
What about a Duramax?
No, they're just all horrible.
Duramax.
But modern American engines, congratulations, because we have an LT1
This is not
modern conversion in. Huh?
This is a pushrod engine. This is not modern.
No, I know, but it's still an American engine, and it still produces a lot of power.
It does.
More so than the old 7.2 litre ones that you used to find in the low riders, you know. We've got an LT1 in, which is, again, we were complimenting it the other day, a very small engine, very high horsepower.
Quite. Very impressive. And they just, I think fundamentally, they just make the best noise. Why should I drag an engine over here? To look at the size?
Yeah, size comparison.
That's boring. We won't be doing that. So, yes, just look at how big my engine is compared to my other one.
Interesting, that people might like to know.
Yes, look at my engine size. Well, this is a 6.2. That is a 2. I think that's a jug of milk. So, let us investigate. Sorry, did you have something to say there?
No, I didn't.
No, it's just you. I made a little peep. So, let us unbox the gearbox now, which is a 6-speed 6L80E, I believe. Okay guys, new day, and yesterday I had to quickly rush to the A&E or E&R. Stupid really. I was lifting this engine onto the table, there was a block of wood, I'll put the CCTV footage, the engine crushed my thumb. I've had an x-ray, everything's fine, my bones are fine, but I have limited movement, but everything's fine. But I crushed my thumb because this engine is heavier than my hand is able to deal with. Who figured? Anyway, moving on, I have spread everything on the table, all of our kit as it were, to get everything packed into this Defender. We've got a few little bits that I'll talk through, but let's have a good look and walk through all of what I've got to make this engine and transmission fit into that Defender behind me. Okay guys, so starting at the front, we obviously have our engine and we have our transmission, and in between that we have our torque converter, and then you're going to have over here somewhere a starter ring gear. That ring gear is literally just for the starter motor to grab hold of the crankshaft and spin it enough for it to fire. Walking through the rest of this kit, we have a mounting kit for a Defender. A lot of these bits are supplied by Maker. So these are the engine mount kits. It is, to me, what looks like a fairly universal fitting for an LS mount. And then this is shaped for the Defender chassis rails. Now, a Defender, obviously, with the amount of torque that this vehicle is going to put out, there's going to be a lot of twisting motion. And so these are essentially spreader plates. So they will help strengthen the chassis and prevent any sort of cracking, twisting, anything like that. So I'll have to cut off these mounts as we do for most of our engine conversions. And then we'll sort of hang the whole engine, transmission and transfer box all as one unit, and then we can work out where this all wants to sit, tack them, lift it all out, weld them in properly, and then we can bolt it in for good. But we have an alternator. Obviously there are no ancillaries that come with a bare engine, so we're going to have to build this thing up to be a full engine. We've got slimline headers, we have alternator mounting brackets, we have all the pulleys, the PAS, all the stuff like that, an oil filter, some airflow sensors, lambda sensors, all the bolts here. So I'm going to have a good look over this, get my head around it. We've got an oil pickup over there, what it looks like. And I've actually got more stuff for this, but I haven't unpacked everything. Just wanted to get what was essential for me to build up essentially a full running powertrain, and then we can drop it in. But let me get my head around this, and then we can start bolting some bits on. Okay guys, so now that everything has been mounted as much as I have with the equipment for the general powertrain, waiting for a spacer here, some exhaust manifold gaskets, I want to mount the powertrain so that I can proceed with this, do the cooling kit, the exhaust, etc, etc. I have a full Maker kit here, and We've got our front engine mounts there, and we've got our new rear crossmember design here. So I've got to mount this all up, but before I can do that, I've got to prepare what most of you guys have seen me do before. I've got to cut off the front engine mounts here and the rear transfer box mounts, so it's left with a bare frame rails, and then I can proceed to swing the whole powertrain in, drill and bolt everything in, weld the front mounts on, and then hopefully we can get this big V8 sitting into this car here. So let's go. Okay guys, now that our spreader plates and our LS mounts essentially are welded to the front of the chassis, I've got to turn my attention to that cross member that Maker supply. Now that cross member is a replacement for the original Defender, which is on all Defenders. Some are sort of tubular, and this particular one and the later Defenders are this kind of flat beam style. They stop the chassis being able to fold in the middle, and then you've obviously got your transfer box mounts here and here. So if I'm at the front of the car, I'll sort of put you over here. I'm standing where the gearbox crossmember would sit, so here and here. We're not going to use that anymore, you get rid of that, and I'll flip you around and I'll show you where we're going to put it. So you usually mount it on these four, and that's the same across all Defenders. You'd mount it on there. What we're going to be mounting is we're going to get rid of these mounts. So this is your transfer box mounts or the rear gearbox mounts. This side and this side, you're going to remove them, and I'll quickly just cut them off. It's a bit boring, so I'm just going to get rid of these. This one as well. Okay, cool. So that is our new replacement gearbox crossmember that used to sit here, now sits probably a good 10 inches back. Gives that same structural support for the chassis, but that is our new transfer box and rear gearbox mounting kit. So now that we can, we've got our front engine mounts welded on, painted them black, got our rear mounts, we've got all our mounting kit ready to go, so we can drop this engine and gearbox into this and see what this engine looks like in the engine bay, which is most exciting, I think. Let's get the forklift lifted up, drop it in. Okay guys, so that is the LS3 mounted into our Defender 90. Really, really cool. We tried a little bit of a different way this time to mount the engine. Usually we always use the forklift and we always assemble it as the engine and gearbox together, sometimes also with the transfer box. Now, the issue when you have that is things become a little bit sketchy, but it's much easier than mounting the engine, then mounting the gearbox. It's much easier to swing it all in, mount the rear of it all up, and then you can land the engine. So usually we're crawling on the floor and we're doing it here. We decided to do it a bit more of a height, then we can actually get access to the rear end of it. Certainly made it easier. It might have looked a bit more sketchy on camera, but it's no different apart from the potential of just dropping an engine, which is very expensive. So we double checked all the straps, etc. But anyway, let's look at the engine bay. So guys, this is it mounted in the Defender, and actually surprisingly, there's quite a bit of room in here. We're used to seeing the M57s, the 6-cylinder diesel. Essentially, this is the bottom end is the same size as a 4-cylinder because obviously you've got 4 cylinders each one. So the crank is quite a small unit, and it's a good-looking unit actually. It sits in there very nicely. There's a lot of room to work around everything, and everything bolts up really nicely. Obviously, it's always a little bit sketchy. I say sketchy, it's not sketchy, it's a little bit arduous trying to align everything together, make it all sit, but this is one of those things, once it's mounted, one, it looks very motivational because it looks like we've done a lot, and then, you know, we can do all the bits after, but it's nice to see it sitting in here in its final position. You've got a nice room, a nice amount of working room and everything. I mean, can you imagine changing an alternator on this? It'd be the easiest thing in the world. But everything lines up really nicely, so we're literally going to come straight out here into our radiator pack. It's just nice to see an LS3 fitted that we've done in-house. With the AC, if you want AC, it can sit here on an LS, it can sit here, you can put the alternator over here, you can put the alternator down there. They're so modular. Look at all the bolt holes. You can really...
Loads of space for hoses and pipe work down here.
I mean, it's a simple engine. It's literally, it's probably one of the simpler conversions realistically because these are so conversion heavy and there's so much support on aftermarket items to be able to fit them into anything. Like I said, you can move the alternator to here, the AC can go there, the AC can go down here. There's a load of configurations for these things. So, and of course they put out a load of power. So this would be very interesting in this vehicle. And that is roughly 500 brake mounted up to a 6-speed auto in a Defender 90. Very cool. Okay guys, so in front of me we have the full standalone engine harness for an LS3 package. Now, there is so many plugs, but everything is neatly labelled on one of these, which is fantastic. Usually, a standalone engine harness, there are a number of tags and stuff just telling you where things go, but not like this, which is really, really impressive to see. And this actually is a full standalone package, so I believe that we could get this thing running without the Defender whatsoever. It actually just looks like it all runs on its own fuse board, everything that is needed to get this thing running literally on a bench, a pallet, a floor, or in any kind of car of your choice. This is a really, really nice harness, and everything's really nice. There's even sort of Hella stamps across the relays, so this is going to be a long-standing serviceable loom, so it'll be, you know, we shouldn't have to ever replace this. This is a really nice kit to see, but as I said, this is one of the biggest harnesses that I've ever seen with regards to a car conversion kit, so it's just going to be a case of literally reading, obviously, what you do know, plug in one thing at a time, and eventually it'll all be done, and you'll find out where things go. Now, I'm unsure, because this is what looks like a fairly universal harness. It might be catered a little bit more towards the Defender, but it even has got things like its own pedal. So we'll have to mount this into the bulkhead and get it all set up, but of course you can't use a Defender pedal without an adapter loom. This looks identical to the actual Defender setup anyway, just the little the pedal's different, and to be honest, actually looks like a slightly better quality than the Defender unit. So I always start with the engine first, and I usually start around where the ECU wants to live, but I don't know where the ECU is going to live in this, so I'm going to start slightly differently. On the engine bay of the LS3, I can see the alternator. I'm actually going to start with the alternator. That's right at the front. Alternator, throttle body, and from there, however much of the harness I have left, I'll just continue to plug in from there, eventually leading back to the gearbox. So nothing more than to drape this over the engine bay, find out where everything goes, plug everything in, work out what we're not going to use, and get this thing fitted. Okay guys, so you join me on the wiring side of this conversion, and I've got the fuse board underneath me. That makes most sense for the conversion. I could mount it anywhere else realistically because the standalone harness is long enough. However, it makes most sense to me to access a fuse board around here. So I've got to run a couple of wires up to the dash, and the LS3 is a CAN bus controlled vehicle. So the Defender is not CAN bus, the Puma is. So basically I need to work out, this side will be the Defender, so this will still run off the transfer box, the speed, the mileage, that kind of stuff. I'm going to have to change the fuel gauge and the temperature gauge. I'm going to have to give it some form of engine light, and I'm also going to have to give it some form of oil pressure situation. This vehicle's already got a voltmeter, which is fine. We can leave that in situ, however, I might switch that out for something else. But we want to be able to see the oil pressure, at least mechanically on a first start. After that, you get that kind of oil light come on and off. So what I'm going to do is pull this out, and then I can access ignition, because the ECU needs some form of wake-up signal to basically tell it that you've put the key in the ignition, switched it on to power up the ECU, send fuel to the injectors, and that kind of stuff. So we'll pull this out, have a quick look, and I can work out how the wiring goes up to it, and then we'll access the throttle pedal and go from there. So guys, we have some more done to the engine bay. Our cover's arrived, and our air filter is fitted. So we are nearing very close to a first fire up on this machine. Now what I'm actually doing is, because this is an LS3, we're going to require bigger brakes to be able to stop this beast. Not only that, this thing has 37-inch Maxxis trepidours. So this is a big, heavy vehicle that now has a lot of power. So this brake servo will no longer be capable of stopping this. Well, it will, but it'll just be, you could put yourself in a dangerous situation. So this is what's known on a Defender as a single diaphragm. And for a big brake kit of any kind that is not a standard Land Rover caliper, this will be required to change to a double banded servo. And what I mean by double band is you have one band and two band, and that will allow some extra vacuum and some extra, basically give a mechanical advantage when you're trying to draw a vacuum. It'll be a larger vacuum, and then it'll be a larger servo assisted braking force. You can get the stopping power you require. So we can't just go ahead and straight away just change this to a double-banded servo, because we still, without changing the full brake setup and all the brake hard lines, because this has a 3-port master cylinder. Now, Land Rover, as always in their infinite wisdom, did something very annoying, which is on the ABS Defenders, and they're the only ones that have a double-banded servo, and the ABS module will be sitting around here, they have 2 ports that come out of the master cylinder. So essentially you've got rear and front, and this will go down to a brake splitter. Now, on an ABS Defender, this port is blocked. And so essentially what I'd have to do if I wanted to fit a double-banded servo would have to be, again, it could all bolt straight on, but then I'd have to completely remake all the hard lines and the brake lines and split them all separately to each caliper in the correct order to make sure that all the brakes work. But that's a lot of faff that we don't really need. Now, Loff, you guys know, I always shout and scream about Loff. They have a really cool and clever kit, which is called a power boost. And essentially what it is a spacer plate which is countered to allow us to fit our original master. So you may wonder, oh, why can't I just fit the original master? So a non-ABS Defender master sits that way. See the 2 mounting holes? On an ABS, they sit that way. So you can't just swap over the master annoyingly. Now this will essentially clock this servo to allow us to fit this master to an ABS servo to a non-ABS pedal box. So this is a really, really interesting kit. I'm one of the first people to have got one of these, which is fantastic. I'm very excited to simplify the installation, as it were, and give this thing the power it needs with regards to braking. And of course, the engine that we have just fitted, which is super exciting and looking really, really good. I'm very happy with how the engine bay is looking and sitting. There's a little bit more to do. I'm just going to remake that coolant line again, because it sits at a bit of an odd angle because of this Alisport radiator. So we're not too far from a first startup. I have done the fuel lines. They're just a nylon braid that go all the way back to the tank. Interestingly, about an LS3, it is a non-return system. So usually M57, any other kind of engine, certainly Land Rover ones, 2 lines come up, and essentially what it doesn't use, the injectors will spill back and send it all back to the tank. The LS3 just eats it all up and gives you a lot of power. So just 1 line going from the engine back to the tank through a regulator and a filter assembly, which is really cool because it sort of returns itself back at the filter and then sends what's required up to here. I mean, this just looks ridiculous in the engine bay. Really cool to see this thing sitting here. It sits really nicely. There's plenty of room to work around it. The engine bay is huge on a Defender, which is really cool. But let's install this servo power boost from Loff, and hopefully it all goes together. Guys, you joined me late in the shop, and this has been such an interesting conversion. Actually, dare I say, easier than an M57. I held my breath there because it hasn't started yet. However, there's no turbo to deal with, so no intercooler lines, no custom, any of that. It is a CAN bus system, the LS3, but it is far less complex than the BMW with regards to the general conversion. So the LS3 that you buy out, a crate engine, is actually manufactured as a conversion engine. And as such, it is hugely simplified. So with the BMWs, you have to get rid of the EGRs, you have to basically put it into a standalone state like a generator. So, okay guys, you joined me late in the shop and we're almost finished with this LS3 conversion. There's a few more bits to do, and one of the things I want to do now is to fill it with fluids. Now, I have the wrong fuel connectors, and these need to be by 10.5 because it needs to run a 10mm line all the way up to the fuel rail itself. So I stupidly ordered 8mm, got the wrong ones, so they'll be here hopefully in the morning. So there's a little snag list left in my head with regards to what we need to do. The LS3 needs a fresh air intake for the PCV system. So on the front of the passenger side or the driver's side in the US, you have like a port, what almost looks like it's near the fuel rail. Now on that is your fresh intake. Now you can't just have a small air filter on it because it has to be metered by the MAF sensor, and the ECU needs to adjust the fuel in. So you could probably get away with it with regards to a small air filter and sort of tuck it out the way. However, in order to have this running as smoothly as possible, as smooth as an LS can be, this will need to go in between the MAF sensor and the throttle body. And that is how a standard LS3 system is on a factory car. So I'm not worrying about that for the second. I have got some bits in the post with regards to that to be able to get it into this tube and make it look neat. Spend a lot of time making sure that this conversion is really neat, as all of my conversions and all of our conversions here and all the work we do. If you're going to do it properly. So we have got everything as neat as possible. And during the cooling line build, I've done a few things over and over again. I want as much hardline as possible, and the LS3 has a tendency to overheat. So in order for that, the cooling lines have to be sat relatively low. So it doesn't want to climb uphill. So all the cooling lines are sat low and a final sweep up there. Because again, I want the engine bay to look clean and tidy and a professional install. And obviously it's such a nice looking engine. So I wanted to make sure that when you're looking around it, it looks factory, it looks like a proper conversion. I've seen a number of conversions done by big brands, big names, for Defenders, in magazine shoots and stuff like this. And the engine bay just looks rubbish. There's pipes going for the heaters all over the place. There's loads of wiring everywhere. I'd like it as tucked as possible, so everything's neat, clean, stowed away. And then obviously the benefit of that is serviceability. It's tucked right away so you can access it. And also, if everything's draped over the engine, it's going to get hot and more likely to perish sooner. So, also, I don't know what this is yet. It wasn't labelled, so I'm not worrying about it just yet. Again, with the LS3, it doesn't need a lot to run. So it might actually just be an additional sensor for like an evac system, something like that, or an emissions control. If it's obsolete and it runs fine and I can check all the parameters on the ECU, then I shall omit it and I shall sort of stow it away. I want to fill it with fluids because ready for tomorrow's start, I want to make sure that it has fluids because I haven't fitted a battery to it yet, and I'm worried if I fit a battery and for whatever reason, if I put the wrong wire on the crank, I know I haven't, it turns over without oil, we could be making a very expensive mistake. So before I even, I've not powered anything on, we fitted our brake servo, I've got most of the harness done, and mechanically it's all sorted. So I think I'm ready to fill it with oil. I want to fill it with power steering oil, gearbox oil, coolant. Actually, I'm not going to do the coolant yet, just because of this pipe. I'm going to have to remove this, and you have to remove the coolant pipe to do so, it'll make a mess. I want to fill it with engine oil first, power steering second, gearbox, and then we can worry about the bits later on. So let's have a look at the engine bay. So this is what I was talking about. Everything is nice and neat. Don't worry about this just yet. This is kind of like the conversion harness as it enters. I've made like a custom plate where it enters the footwell. So where the clutch pedal used to be assembly, that's where all the wiring enters. This is a TD5, or used to be a TD5 car. On an early dashboard, there is no access for the wiring to go up to the dash. Like on a Puma, you've got these bulkhead grommets. They're quite handy. On a TD5, it's just a lot of hard work, and you basically have to go out the battery, then up through into the harness, and they chafe. It's a nightmare. So I make an access panel here. We do this with the BMW as well to access the throttle pedal. and make everything nice and smooth. So this kind of wiring stowed in the corner. There's a few question marks with the conversion loom. I've got things like a stop lamp harness. I don't think I need that, so ignore that corner for the second. But gearbox breather, cooling lines all run on the back, then they climb up this for a last into the heater box. Run on here, T-piece into the original TD5 bottle. They run down into stainless, aluminium, and then they run into the thermostat housing. Again, this piece of pipe here is a bit challenging. We've had to make one there, and this sort of rubber buffer protects us against where it's clashing on the radiator, and then a TIG welded piece here where they can sort of climb up there. When it comes to the large radiator, this is an early V8 rad pack from LS3, and then we have the brackets, everything's all mounted here, and then you've got like a steam tube that comes out of the LS up into there, and then it'll basically go back straight up to the Puma. Puma, the TD5 bottle. Gearbox cooler lines, big rad. Let's fill it with some fluid. So I'm going to be filling the LS with a Comma Synergy. Now, this is what we use for all the Defenders in the shop, and we have many of them in the shop here. Now, this is, and you've got to make sure with an LS, so this is a really decent oil. I've used it for years. But anyway, it's got to be an SN. I don't actually know what that is. And it's got to be, here you go, look, GM vehicles. So this is suited for modern, to be fair, most cars that come through this shop will be having this oil fitted to it. We've been using this for years. They really quieten down the Pumas. The Defender TD5s love it. Anyway, it's GM rated. So we're going to be putting it in the LS. So let us fill this up with oil. And I should talk through the various oils. It might bore you. However, this is such an interesting engine bay. I have some things to share. And my thoughts versus an M57. Okay guys, so the LS3 takes around 8 litres approximately. So I'm going to put 7 in, we'll check on the dipstick, and we'll go from there. Now I actually think that this conversion might be a little bit easier than the M57. Now the M57 runs a complex CAN bus system. And although that this engine is CAN bus controlled, it does not have a turbo, and it is an engine specifically designed for a conversion car. So this is a crate conversion engine. And the US, they install these things in everything because they're cheap over there. They're not that cheap over here. But there is so much on the aftermarket for these, and they're so modular. You can adjust all the engine mounts to so many places and positions. You can have the alternator, the air compressor, all that kind of stuff. And you just can't do that with M57. Now the M57 is better for a different application. As far as installing goes, space-wise, all of that, the LS fits in nicer, and it's been a nice conversion to carry out actually. Cooling lines are easier. It's been a nice conversion, and I'm very excited to hear it start up. Okay, that's 7.5 litres for now, until we rotate the engine and we build oil pressure that goes through the oil filter. I can't accurately fill it. There's a few kind of things online about how it should be. It's always approximate. This engine luckily has a dipstick, so I can check it out once I've turned it over and built oil pressure. There's a very specific way to start a crate engine, and I'll run through that now. Okay, one thing I learned about building engines and building cars, never trust your brain. So I've put in 7.5 litres. This engine requires about 8 or thereabouts. Now I'll go home tonight and think, yeah, 7.5 litres, I guarantee tomorrow I'll come in and go, how much oil did I put in? And then you can potentially have to drain it all out. Never trust your brain, so just write it down. Engine 7.5 litres. Okay, so when you're starting an LS crate engine, I've been around LS's before. This is my first install, but it's not my first engine conversion, as you guys know. Now, a brand new engine, this doesn't just apply to LS's. It is very important to build oil pressure, and that is not just the light on the dash. Now, I have wired the light up on the dash, but it is always good to monitor oil pressure. And for that, you will need a mechanical oil pressure gauge. Now on an LS3, the oil pressure sensor switch is at the back. I will be removing that because I don't care what the ECU says. I want to test it properly, make sure that I'm building good oil pressure. Now, when we're going for a first crank, I will unplug the ECU. You can remove the fuse and you can overdo these things. I don't want this thing to fire up without any oil pressure because it could damage the engine. So I'll unplug the ECU. I will put the ignition on. I will let the fuel system prime for a number of seconds, minutes. It just needs to get up to the head and needs to recirculate back through. The fuel filter and regulator shouldn't be too long. After that, I will turn it over with the ECU unplugged until I see the mechanical oil. Let me get it. You don't need to go crazy with this stuff. This is just a cheap mechanical pressure gauge until I see a decent amount of pressure building on that gauge. That lets me know that it is safe for the engine to start, it is well lubricated, and so we can go for a first fire. Once it has built oil pressure, we can plug the ECU in, we can switch it all off, and then we can go for a first fire. Now this vehicle is going for its headers, it's going for its exhaust on Monday, which is in 3 days' time. Hang on, it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 4 days, whatever it is. I will be running this straight off the headers initially, so it's going to be incredibly loud. However, the exhaust system that we're having built for this is going to sound pretty much the same. If you guys have seen this car before, you will know that this is, I think, my most out there car as it speaks, mechanically speaking. And we've been tasked to make this thing louder than it initially was as the TD5, which is just, this thing was the loudest thing I'd heard. So this is going to be even louder, but it's still going to sound nice. I don't just want it to be deafening. We are choosing to exit through behind the passenger seat with the exhaust, so it's going to be incredibly loud. But we're mixing both headers together. So when you're building exhaust with two banks, so left and the right side, you've got two sides of the engine. If you do not mix that exhaust note, it would sound a little bit weird. So you want to cross it over or join them into one pipe to get the best exhaust sound and a nice amount of back pressure for the system. So now that I've filled the engine, I'll fill the power steering and do the gearbox. Now I'm really anticipating how loud this thing is actually going to sound. Certainly without headers, but as I said, we are going to be running this out of a single side exit. It's going to be coming out right about where my head is now. And if you guys have ever heard any V8, I'm sure you all have, you'll understand I have slight concerns it might be too loud. I hope not. And we're going to add a silencer, but it's certainly going to be one very, very, very loud machine. But that's what we want. So the gearbox was full and it tipped all over my hoodie. I know they come with some. I didn't realise it was full to the absolute brim. So I got covered, which was great. Well, at least we checked that it's full. So now we've got a full engine, a full transfer box and a full gearbox. So I'm satisfied that we can basically turn it over to build oil pressure. However, I will wait until I've got those fuel lines done, because as soon as I hear the engine turning over, my mind is going to be going crazy to make sure that I've done everything correct. So I'd rather just be able to then plug in the ECU, fire her straight up. So now that's done, let's move on to something else. So guys, now that all of our fluids are in, I put some new batteries in. There's nothing left but to turn the key. It won't start because I've got the ECU removed. I've got my oil pressure gauge rigged up on the left-hand side of the screen so I can see it. All I'm waiting to see is waiting for it to build pressure. If it doesn't build pressure, I'll stop cranking and I'll try again in about sort of 10 seconds. Now, because it's a mechanical gauge, the oil's gonna have to climb up to this. At that point, once I think I'm ready to start, it should have circulated through the oil filter. I can recheck the oil level and then we can go for a first start. And you know what? The days of being really excited about this, not about the whole work and about the job, really excited, but the first turn of the key, have been slightly marred by my previous experiences where things have been leaking, it doesn't start, doesn't run, and then you're into a whole head scratching thing. So here's to fingers crossed. I hope this thing fires up. I'm pretty sure I've got everything perfect. We haven't built oil pressure yet though. Okay guys, here goes the first start. I switched it off because I got scared, but it does run. Okay, we're going to fire it up now and we're going to leave it idling. It's extremely loud and hopefully let it bring it up to temperature. Incredibly loud. Bloody. Oh, look at that. We'll have to get rid of that. I didn't think about that.
They don't peel off quite as well as the juice brake stickers do, they, Sam?
They don't. I would have preferred to fit my own brakes. However, bit of a wait time on them. Okay guys, so that is the LS3 pretty much done. It's come back from exhaust, really nice system. And we've chosen to keep the original very leery, loud side exit, 3-inch exit, straight from the V8 headers down into one silencer and straight up the side. So it is full Asbo mode. Now I've got a couple of little bits to do. I've just bled the Alcon brakes. I haven't shown the install of those. And obviously we need to be able to stop this machine. I've got a couple of things to do. I need to put the wheels on. We finally got rid of those tiny little rollers, and it's time to get this thing looking like it used to do. We have given the front end a tiny little refresh, gone for the kind of performance open grille, the Sunsport, and then the classic surrounds, just to freshen its face, because I'm not a fan of KBX. Get in the comments. It feels like the Americans do, the American market does, and I think on a 110 it kind of looks okay if it's big, but I don't know. I feel like that front end might do it justice. We're not too sure just yet. Bonnet has to go back on, wheels have to go back on, check the levels, and then a road test. This is little Tom having a go. I still can't believe this vehicle. It's just so menacing. And now it has the soundtrack to match its looks. It just looks insane. Very cool. You would always think this thing had a V8. It just looks like it should. Seems odd having a TD5.
That's unbelievable. Like, I wasn't going fast. The engine's brand new, so we can't rev it too hard. But that was a lot of fun, and it sounds just and it's you sit so high.
It sounds amazing.
That is the smell, the noise, the rumble. It's it's quite intoxicating. I could get used to that.
jake braking in America, isn't it? Merry Christmas.
And a happy new year. Was your face?
Literally so. So guys, that brings the end to this LS3 Corvette build. And it's nice to have seen this vehicle come back for this engine swap and finally get a look, finally get a soundtrack to match its looks. And it just looks so good in the engine bay. It looks very at home with this kind of style, and on the road it just gets some very, very interesting looks indeed. And it's so loud, but equally it doesn't drone at all. The exhaust system, we wanted it to be loud when you're on song, but equally if you're just cruising, it's not barreling inside and deafening you. And considering this thing's a soft top and the exhaust is obviously in front of the near side rear wheel, it's not bad at all, is it, Tom?
No,
it's
not
actually
at all.
okay. I've definitely heard worse. So
For a lot more money as well.
yes. Let's have a look at the engine bay. We obviously fitted the Corvette engine, the LS3. It's an LS3 crate engine. We have the 6L80E gearbox and the original Defender's LT230 transfer box. For those who are wondering or haven't seen the previous video of this build, I will link it down below. If you're having an LS3 or the power and those kind of things, you can't just fit the engine and gearbox to all the standard componentry and just send it on its way. You can, but it won't be long before it snaps something. So this vehicle, previously when we did all the 5-inch lift suspension kit, we had hardened CV shafts, flanges, everything with regards to strengthening the axles to make sure that it could take abuse off-road, but it also is required for the abuse for the engine that it's now delivering down to the props, etc. Maker's mounting kit, custom hoses, all made in-house by me, and we use as much aluminium straight section as possible. I don't like when there's loads of hoses everywhere. I'm very neat about my engine conversions. I don't want them to look in and see that they look messy. It doesn't look like there's actually any wiring, which is the point for me anyway. It looks like a factory installation. You can't see anything apart from the big engine which sits in front of you. We upgraded the single brake booster to a Loft, to a double-banded servo and a Loft adapter so we can use the original ABS servo. It's all sitting very nice. I think I've done a nice job, if I do say so myself. AliSport Rad Pack, which is from the early V8 Defenders and double core, so it is suitable for cooling such a big vehicle. Refresh the front end with a Sunsport grille, classic surrounds, and to be honest, that's about it. She's looking good, ready for the road. It's nice with the crate engine, and I will say, like I mentioned previously during it, that is an easier swap than an M57. No turbo pipes, no forcing it into a standalone state, so the BMW have to delete swell flaps, make it think it's in the original car, remove the engine mounts, the vacuum lines, reroute all that. That's not a problem. But still, different applications. That's a much easier one to do, in my mind. M57, LS3, which one wins? Still up for debate, depends very much on the use of the vehicle. But I love the soundtrack of that. You just can't beat a V8. I just love it. Sounds great. And it's nice that it's all brand new. Any words, Tom? Anything to say?
Congratulations on the first LS3 swap.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah,
You've done a bloody good job.
yeah, I think I have as well. It's as I would want it. I do everything here as if it were my car.
It's very enjoyable to be a passenger in. As you say, no droning.
Yeah.
It's very pleasant when it's on the cruise. And then, of course, when you need to light it up, oh, it does that just fine.
We are still bedding this thing in. However, there is a lot of information of how to do that. And I always think the most important thing is before giving it anything at all, it has been sitting there idling up to operating temperature first, and then debate's open to whether you can boot it or not, or keep it under a certain rev limit. Do let me know in the comments. Not about how to run in an engine, that would just be boring chat, but about this vehicle in general. Big brakes, obviously, fitted the big brakes. It's still running the original 5-inch lift, and it has been for 5 years now. Still looks well. Looks mental. It just looks absolutely insane. Anyway, bye-bye. Thank you for watching.
If you saw this coming behind you when it was revving up and you were having a little road rage incident, tell us how scared you would be seeing this in your rearview mirror. Because I'd be terrified. I don't know about you.
It just says get out my way.
But if you saw that in the rearview mirror and somebody who was driving this was having a bad day, yeah, I think you'd pull over. I wouldn't want to mess with this vehicle.
We see these things all the time, right? And on camera and on the internet, these things exist. Me and Tom are telling you this is here in real life. And sometimes it's a bit weird to get disconnected and you see this on YouTube and you're like, oh yeah, that's crazy, whatever. When it's at the co-op next to just a regular car.
Next to a Nissan Micra.
It's just ridiculous.
And particularly when you start it up and there's an old lady walking...
Oh, did you see that?
Walking next to the side exit exhaust. Yeah.
I started up and it just went... Whoa.
And there was a poor lady standing right by the exhaust, and she really...
She looked at me.
Really... I mean, this is a
hate.
Sunday morning, we're filming this right now, and she really didn't have a good time.
She did not appreciate that at all. But I didn't see her.
Oh no, it wasn't malicious.
No, I know it wasn't at all, but it was hilarious because she looked at me and she said she did this. Oh, good
but yeah, compared to most other cars on the road, it is just absolutely silly.
Insane.
But that's what this is. It's not to...
It's a toy.
It's not to go rock climbing with, which some people will go, oh, and it's very capable. But it's not to do that. It is just a fantastic toy and a real passion piece by the owner.
Now, I will say, before you chime in and go, oh, it's another pavement princess, this thing goes on the chute. So this is on the chute. This is a shooting vehicle as well as a toy. So this thing does actually go into the mud. And I have pictures and videos of me doing it deep in the mud at one of our Land Rover shows. So it does get used, it just does get cleaned, and it does also happen to drive on the road. We have the hard compound trapdoors as opposed to the soft sticky, so we can get the maximum wear out of these tyres whilst it's on the road. Cool vehicle. I've loved it. It's been incredible for me to stretch my imagination, shall we say, creating it as tall as it can be, as wide as it can be, and now as fast as it can be. It's been good fun.